Without objection, the motion will be agreed to, and hearing no objection, the motion is agreed to. The chair recognizes Representative Pickle-Antonio for an absence motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that minority party members asking leave to be absent or absent the week of Monday, July 21st, 2025 be excused so long as a written request is on file in the minority leadership offices.
Without objection, the motion will be agreed to, and hearing no objection, the motion is agreed to. Bills for third consideration. Communication from the Governor.
Pursuant to Article 2, Section 16 of the Ohio Constitution, which states the governor may disapprove any items in a bill making appropriation of money, I hereby disapprove the following items contained in House Bill 96 and sets forth below. The reasons for so doing is in the public interest. The text I am disapproving is identified in this message by reference to the corresponding page and box text of the bill.
House will stand at ease for 1 or 2 moments or less.
Remove that remaining line item vetoes through 65 and 67.
No, I don't think that's the motion. So, sorry.
Do you have number 1?
The House will stand at ease.
Thank you.
Some brains don't work as well here for some reason. I apologize. He said to the former senator. The chair recognizes Representative Manning.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House dispense with the reading of the full veto message on amendment substitute House Bill 96 and that the message be spread upon the pages of the journal.
Without objection, the motion will be agreed to, and hearing no objection, the motion is agreed to. The House will now consider item 66.
Item number 66, school district property tax levy restrictions.
Very good. The question is, shall item 66 pass, notwithstanding the objections of the governor? The chair recognizes Representative Romer.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Ohio is facing a property tax crisis. We have heard in our offices thousands of people contact us to say, I can't afford to pay my property taxes. I've had huge increases in my bills. I have to choose what I spend my money on, and property taxes make it difficult for me to live. If you look at, I would like to share a few numbers. If you look at the property tax rate in Ohio, it's the 8th highest in all of the United States. If you compare New York, you compare California, our property tax rate is higher than those high tax states. We really need to do something. We need to address property taxes in Ohio. It's something I've worked on for years. It's something that we have looked at for multiple years. One of the things we hear is well, the changes that we made in the budget were not transparent. They were not well thought out. They were done on a hasty basis. And I want to say a couple things to that. Last General Assembly, I chaired, along with Senator Blessing, the Property Tax Study Commission. It was bicameral. It was bipartisan. We issued 21 very well thought out items. In fact, what I wanted to do, I happened to bring this with me today. I'll pull a Bill Seitz here for just a second. This is half of our Property Tax Study Commission. We've got the other half here. We issued an 850-page report. We had 8 meetings. We had over 60 in-person witnesses. Many, many, many others submitted written testimony. So what we did this General Assembly is we used the results of that. We used those well-thought-out recommendations, and we've now heard those in the Ways and Means Committee, which I chair. A couple more numbers. Ways and Means has met 19 weeks. We've met for 23 hours. We have heard 28 bills. We have passed 6 bills. What we are doing here in the budget was heard not only in the Property Tax Study Commission, but also in Ways and Means. These are very, very well vetted bills. But I want to share a couple behind the numbers. I want to share a couple things. And I have permission. Representative Jack Daniels had an opportunity to meet his mom, unfortunately, before she passed. But she and her husband, 41 years ago, built a small home on Lake Milton. Unfortunately, Jack's dad passed and his mom lived there for many years. She saw her property tax rate escalate astronomically. Luckily, in this case, with Jack and his brothers and sisters, they were able to help his mom pay those property taxes. But all of the folks we have don't have those resources. She was able to age in her home the way she wanted to. One of the things we hear is people want to age in their home. I also did a whole lot of work on PACE, and we heard that 97% of folks want to stay in their home. They don't want to go to assisted living. And we need to make sure that property taxes are low enough that that can happen. Had somebody that called in. Robert Gray is my legislative aide. He took a call not too long ago. He's a tough guy, played football at Massillon, but he was very, very upset. We had a lady called in her late 70s, and she was crying. She said, "What am I going to do? My property taxes have escalated so much. My husband unfortunately passed. I'm only getting Social Security. I want to stay in my home." So I've had to take a job in her late 70s working at a flower shop. We want to make sure that those types of things don't happen, that we deal with those appropriately. I want to talk specifically about item 66, tax levy transparency. This is a bill that passed on a bipartisan basis out of the House of Representatives. It's well thought out. And one of the things we're talking about is tax levy transparency. One of our overriding principles should be that our voters understand what they're voting on, that it is transparent. And I would submit to every person here that if you're working on replacement levies, it violates that. The vast majority of people in Ohio do not know what a replacement levy is. They think, well, I'm just replacing it. I'm voting for the exact same thing that I did before. But in almost every instance, that results in an increase in taxation. The other thing that happens is there's a deleterious impact also. The state pays either 10 and 2.5% for those that live in their homes. When you have a replacement levy, that disappears. So not only does a person see an increase in their property taxes because of that, they see an increase also because the state share goes away. We want to make sure that that does not happen. The overriding principle here is transparency. We did a couple other things in this bill. It requires public meetings. We want to make sure that taxpayers have the opportunity to see what is happening, to have input, and when they vote, they know exactly what they're voting on. And we believe that this is fiscally conservative and responsible. One of the things says that if an entity has over 100% of their operating budget in reserve, they can't even place on the ballot a new general expense levy. That just makes sense. If you talk to our voters, they'd say, everything in this makes sense. It gives it more information to me. It makes it more transparent. I know what I'm voting on. And for those reasons, I believe that we should be overriding the governor's veto. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. The chair recognizes Representative Pickle Antonio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to urge a no vote on the question of overriding the governor on item 66. Ohioans deserve real property tax relief. I am not a singer, but sadly, this is not it. We've now known for years that the structure of our system is putting an unbearable strain on many of our community members and that we need to do something to fix it. That's why we had a joint bipartisan commission to discuss solutions for property tax relief. That's why there was a report that was issued However, at the conclusion of that committee, there were no agreement as far as recommendations to take to this body. Item 66, which would limit the types of levies our taxing jurisdictions can use, does nothing to provide property tax relief to homeowners. But what it does do is that it hurts our schools, our fire departments, our children's service agencies, our services for seniors, and on and on. What is more infuriating is that because of the work of the bipartisan and bicameral commission, there actually are bipartisan solutions, and we have legislation that we know would provide real relief without hurting our local communities. None of these bills have moved forward. And instead, we're depriving our communities of needed resources while simultaneously tying their hands as they scramble to make up the difference. Over the past 2 decades, the Republican majority in this state has repeatedly made a choice to invest less from the state level into our local communities. When the state invests less, our schools and communities either have to cut critical services or they have to ask community members to pay higher property taxes. I have heard some conservative organizations say that if we give them less, they'll learn to make do with less. Maybe that sentiment would have validity if we hadn't spent years working with experts to determine what the true and actual cost of educating a child is. I've also heard Republican legislators argue that we are investing more dollars in education than ever before. The part that doesn't get said, though, is that because that dollar amount is not adjusted for inflation, the actual percentage of state share has gone down dramatically. And on top of that, the total dollar amount invested now includes dollars to private religious schools. In addition to depriving communities of state investment, the Republican majority has also altered the local property tax burden by allowing businesses to pay less of that share while individual homeowners pay more. They have also chosen to erode targeted property tax relief, like the homestead exemption for our older Ohioans. And add on top of that, item 66 would have us remove several important tools that provide options for how a local community wants to structure that remaining share of property taxes. What's most confounding is that most of you represent communities that will be hit the hardest by this. Your choices are hurting your own neighbors and friends, hurting school districts like Springfield Local Schools, who currently rely on an emergency levy to prevent fiscal watch. For most of us, a home is one of the most important investments that we will ever make. It determines where we send our kids to school, what our commute to work will look like, whether there's even work available, how healthy we'll be, what community that we will call home. It is imperative not only that people can afford to buy a house, but that they can stay in their homes with their neighbors and their friends in their communities that they've chosen. The tax system is more complicated than it should be, and modification to that system should be made based on thoughtful consideration about who needs that relief, who does not, and how each of the pieces of the puzzle fit together. In a budget where the majority has chosen to invest less of our share into public education than in any time since our funding model was found to be unconstitutional, we should not also be tying the hands of local governments to make up the difference. I urge you to let the veto stand and vote no to override. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. The chair recognizes Representative Isaacson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can't think of a worse way to celebrate Representative Sweeney's birthday than to gather in the Senate, no less, to try and override one of the governor's vetoes. There are two things that we desperately need to do as it relates to property taxes. And thankfully, there's actually a lot of bipartisan consensus on at least one, if not both of these. The first is that our taxpayers desperately need relief. They need cash in their pockets so they can go on vacation, so they can take their families out to dinner, so they can celebrate birthdays, so that they can afford to stay in the homes that they've built lives in. Unfortunately, overriding this veto does not provide any real relief for those homeowners. They need it. We agree they need it. There are bipartisan solutions that did come out of that committee that we would be ready and willing to work on. In fact, we have introduced a number of those bills in a bipartisan and bicameral fashion over the last few years. We can provide property tax relief. We have the money to do it. There's the will to do it. It's bipartisan. And it shouldn't be $30 to the average homeowner or $50 or $60. For the people who really need the relief, who are struggling to pay their property taxes, we need to be sending them at least hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in relief. That means the state has to step up to provide it, which brings me to the second thing the state has to do. We have to end the over-reliance on property taxes to fund our public services in the state of Ohio. The only way we can responsibly do that is by having a tax system that taxes those who can pay their fair share. If we continue to be so fiscally irresponsible to lower taxes on the highest earning individuals in the state, we will continue the system of over-relying on property taxes to fund even the most basic public services. And if we try and do the two things that we're doing today, which is cut taxes for the richest people in the state and try and take property tax resources from schools and local governments, then we're getting the worst of both worlds. Worse public services and a more unequal system. It's actually not that complicated to have it the other way. We can figure this out. The governor vetoed this item for a reason. It's not because he doesn't want property tax relief. He vetoed it because it's not going to provide property tax relief, and it's putting the responsibility on the backs of local communities and schools that are already strained because of a state that underfunds them. The governor saw through this effort. So do we. And so I would encourage people to really take that into account and think about the issue specifically on emergency levies. Those are for emergencies. So a lot of school districts, they fall into fiscal watch. The auditor puts a fiscal watch on them. They're at the end of their rope. The state steps in and says, you're on fiscal watch, we're going to have to bail you out at some point. And the only tool available to them is an emergency levy. Springfield local schools, East Knox, Ravenna in Portage County, Little Miami in Warren County, all of these schools where the only way they got out of fiscal watch was passing emergency levies. Emergency levies encourage fiscal discipline. They are time limited, and they prevent state bailouts. They are the exact type of fiscally responsible tax policy that we should want in those situations when their school districts are at the end of their rope. Tying their hands from doing emergency levies when they are on fiscal watch in an emergency is not just bad for the students in those schools and their families, it's bad policy. It doesn't make any sense. It's fiscally irresponsible. So yes, there are bipartisan ways to do this. I am grateful to the people who care about property taxes because I certainly hear it in my district as much as you all do. We are ready and willing and eager even to pursue those bipartisan solutions. This is not it. So I hope that enough folks in here will join me in voting no, not to override the governor's veto. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. The chair recognizes Representative David Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is a dividing line in the state of Ohio, a line that says that our government is too big. It spends too much, and it taxes our residents too far. There's another side of that line that says the government is perfectly fine. In fact, it should probably grow. Taxes, no, they can keep increasing. And the actual spending, that's perfectly good to continue to go up as well. That dividing line is where we're at today. When we're talking about property taxes, and we're talking about the transparency and the ability for the novel idea that our voters, our property owners, when they're taxed on the most important piece of real estate and investment in their life, their home, that they should have more of a say in how much they're actually spending and what that looks like. What will we see in January? Representative Kevin Miller just came up to me and said he got his value increase letter for his county in Fairfield. His value is increasing 70%. 70%. And because we can't come to agreement over much deeper reform and relief to separate out value increases from tax increases today, what will his residents in Fairfield County see? Massive, unvoted spikes in their property tax bills that they have no say and no control over. That's the dividing line today. There are those who say that that is wrong. That should not be happening. There is something wrong with a tax structure and system that allows for this to continue. And there are others that say, perfectly fine. We want to see that continue. We want to see values increase along with tax rates and tax amounts increase. And that is what the question today is. How should that tax structure, what should the impact be for our homeowners across the state, especially those who are most vulnerable? That tax increase, though, does not have to happen. Item 66 does not help the homeowners in Fairfield County or in any of our counties in bills this January. If values are going up because they're in the revaluation for January, Ohioans will see tax spikes again, unless their local entities take action, serve their homeowners, and decrease their tax rates and not accept the unvoted windfalls that will occur, because item 66 will not directly address that. Every county commissioner, every school board member, every township trustee that will be receiving those unvoted spikes has the responsibility to answer the question to their taxpayer, how much is enough? When we're continuing to give, as we hear the state should be paying for this, the state should be paying for that, who's the state? The state is us. The state is our homeowners, our property owners, our taxpayers, our residents. How much of their money should we be continuing to pay? We've heard tools. Item 66 eliminates tools, yes. But what are those tools? Those tools actually are tools to make it easier to increase property taxes. We heard in the hours and hours and hours of Ways and Means Committee that replacement levies and emergency levies are the tools needed to increase taxes. Because, and I quote, if we were to actually ask the taxpayers for an increase directly, they would never sign off on that. They're tapped out. They'd never agree to that. But if we ask them for a replacement levy, or if we make it sound like there's an emergency and things are going to close and schools are going to shut down if they don't pass this emergency levy, sometimes year after year after year, we've seen emergency levies 20 years. They want those tools to continue to increase taxes. We're in a crisis. And when you're in a crisis, you act immediately. Item 66 provides the transparency our taxpayers are asking. It doesn't decrease funding whatsoever in January. I think we should go much further. I think many of us do too. But this provides a transparency at the very least that our taxpayers then have the tools, have the knowledge, have the ability. If they wish to fund their local entities, they can do so. Nothing in item 66 prevents a local homeowner from increasing their own taxes if they'd like. That's the American way. Why should we continue to give more and more to Columbus and pray it comes back to our local entities to fund our services that we hold dear at the local level? We want you to keep more of your money And then you have the power to decide, how much should my local fire department get? How much should my school be receiving? That is what item 66 does. It puts the power back in the homeowner. It ends the confusion. When you go to the ballot, there will be simple questions. Do you want to increase your taxes? Do you want to keep your taxes the same? That is what you'll be faced with. You will not see confusing language like replacement and substitute, and inflammatory language like emergencies, which emergency levies still allow for large spikes in property taxes to our schools without a vote. You could be voting for an emergency levy, but if your school is still on the 20 mil floor, you're getting those increases even though you just voted for extra money for the emergency levy. That's not transparent. That's not direct to our homeowners. Item 66 removes the confusion, removes the urge for homeowners to increase their taxes without knowing it, and gives the power back to our homeowners. Is it relief? No. Do we need relief? Yes. Are we ready to ask some of those hard questions about using the tools available, which some may say the tools available should only be increases in taxes? The other question should be decreases in spending, or in allowing the voters to actually have that say. Our work is not done. Today, we're taking a step towards transparency. We're telling our voters, our homeowners, that we value their word, their vote, and when I give them the power to do so, we have so much more we must do. Whatever we do today, whatever your vote is, if you're voting for transparency, if you're voting to end confusing tools that make it just easier for our homeowners to continue to increase and increase and increase their burden, you can do that. But ask yourself, when you're speaking to your senior resident, when you're speaking to that first-time home buyer, and they ask, what have you done on property taxes? Number one issue we're going to be getting next year when we go door to door. What have you done on property taxes? If we tell them nothing, we've completely left our duty at the door. This is a step. It's a small but important step to say that we're giving them the tools and the power to put their bill in their own hands and make those decisions for their families. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge a yes vote, and I urge us to continue to working on this important issue.
The question is, shall item number 66 pass? Notwithstanding the objections of the governor, the House will prepare and proceed to vote. I don't have... House will stand at ease. Most of the votes have been registered here, and if anyone believes that their vote is not registered, they can do that orally right now. Representative, your vote is? Very good. Anyone else? Representative Thomas? I think we got you all. Yeah, if your name is showing up as red or green, then the vote is registered, okay? Representative White? Very good. Anybody else? Very good. Isaacson, got it? Very good. Gotcha. Yeah. It's tallied on my sheet. She already voted yes. I'm sorry, no. No. They're all no, and they're all yes. How's that? I got you, Jim. Adam, we got you. Have all members now voted? The clerk will take the roll.
61 affirmative votes, 28 negative votes.
With a 61 affirmative votes and 28 negative votes, the item having received and required constitutional majority has passed, notwithstanding the objections of the governor, and remains a part of the bill. Let me say, if any of the members are unclear whether their vote was registered, which I believe that they all are because we have several absences, but I think that's how many members we have present. If you're unsure and want to be clear about that, I'm looking at the minority side of the aisle since I understand it. I think I know where the Republican side is. So if you'd like to come up and check with the clerk before we're done, we can do that. The chair will now recognize Representative. We're going to stand at ease. If you're unclear as to whether your vote has been registered, I'm talking to the minority caucus, you can come and do that at the time. But we are still at ease. We've already talked about what the count is. The chair now recognizes Representative Manning for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that remaining line item vetoes 1 through 65 and 67 be left pending.
Without objection, the motion will be agreed to, and hearing no objection, the motion is agreed to. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I want to welcome back to the House Representative Mullins. Chair recognizes Representative Manning.
Mr. Speaker, the purpose for which we have convened being completed, I now move that the House stand adjourned until Thursday, July 24th, 2025 at 9 a.m.
Without objection, the House stands adjourned.